So hi, I'm Christine Stapley Banks. I am the mother of a child with cerebral palsy. I'm an author. I'm also the founder of the Nathan Banks Foundation, a nonprofit organization in Jamaica that works for the participation, inclusion, and empowerment of children with disabilities specifically and children with special learning needs generally. Today, I'm here to share with my very good friend, Erin, who is a speech and language pathologist, and she has been an advisor to the Nathan Banks Foundation for the last several years. And today we're here to share with you our Peace Day activity for September 21st. As you may know, Peace Day is an international day that is observed by the United Nations all around the world, where on that day, the intention is to have activities that promote peace taking place around the world. And we feel that this year we wanted to focus on peace for children with special needs who are often alienated, who are often excluded from activities because they look different, they may sound different. And we know that it is an important exercise to talk to young children about peace. And so for our observation, there are two activities that we're doing. One, we're talking with some children about what peace means to them, and we're going to be sharing those videos as we unfold over the next few days. And the key activity that we're doing is to read a book out loud on diversity and inclusion. And the book that we have selected is none other than I'm Just Like You But Different, a story about living with cerebral palsy. And so today, we're going to have a little discussion around peace. And then Erin, who provided tremendous developmental, directional, as well as editorial support on this book, to ensure that it was written in a way that would engage young readers. She's going to take us through an activity of how teachers and parents and others can modify this book to make it more inclusive for all learners, but to also increase the level of interactivity with young children as we discuss the concept of peace. The book carries out the themes of friendship and hope and compassion, which are some of the underlying themes for World Peace Day for 2020, which speaks to, in its theme, shaping peace together. And so with that, I'm going to just hand over to Erin, who will just talk to us a little bit about what peace means for her, and then she will take us into why this book is a good book that helps to bring out the concept of friendship and compassion and love.
Thank you, Christine. I have to say I'm very excited to be doing this. There are many perspectives, opinions, and thoughts on what peace can mean, but I feel like it's very individualized. For me, peace is something that I strive for internally, as in a balance of my emotions and thoughts, but it's also something I strive for in my own behavior towards others. I think of peace as being inclusive, compassionate, empathetic, sympathetic, thoughtful, and mindful. What does peace mean to you, Christine?
Peace means family. Peace means the ability to be, to express yourself. Peace means the ability to be accepted for who you are without judgment, without condemnation, where you're able to access your right, as a human being, to live in a way that honors who you are.
Great.
That's what peace means to me.
That's great. Like you said, we will be hearing from some of the children that we've had with their videos on what peace means to them, and I have to say some of those are really, really cute. So tell me then, how is it that, I'm going to turn this as an interview to you, how is International Peace Day relevant to our special needs population?
So that's a great question, and hence the reason we selected that as our focus for this year, because peace can be so broad, and oftentimes people think of peace within the capacity of just wars, of just nations against nations. and they don't often think about it on a more micro level. And for children with special needs, many of them are bullied because they look different and they sound different, because other children don't understand what those differences mean. And as human beings, we tend to fear what we don't understand. And so for many children, including my own son, where my son has cerebral palsy, and when he was in kindergarten, there was a little girl who, when she saw him come on the playground, declared that she don't want any disabled child on the playground and he must get off. And so the conversation of peace becomes very relevant for children with special needs. And I have found through this book that we're about to use, I actually wrote that book to help with that situation for Nathan when he was in kindergarten, because he was being excluded, he was being teased because he looked like a baby to 5-year-olds, because only babies are fed by other people. And because these little ones never got anybody to explain to them why he was different, it ended up being a very hard situation for him until I wrote the book and read it to the children during reading circle, and it shifted entirely their attitudes towards him, because they now recognize that he was different, but that it wasn't bad to be different, that it was okay. And also, they were able to ask the questions that they had about why and what, and a lot of them found that there was so much similarities with them. Like when he was sick, when he was born, there were a number of children who also had that experience, or they had a brother who had that experience. They also found out that he needs help, and they were able to identify that they too needed help in another way. So by having this discussion around why he was different and how he was similar, it really opened up for the children a different perspective of him, and it brought him peace in his class. He had a beautiful year together where they just loved him and supported him, and it was just such a phenomenal experience. And so for me, bringing this particular story to other children, bringing this particular situation to encourage parents and teachers for World Peace Day to not just read a generic book, but to be very intentional. And that's something you've taught me about being intentional with the activities that we're doing, so that we can help to teach children these very important concepts so that they can become more peaceful in how they relate to things that are different.
You know, I think it took so much insight from you to have come up with this kind of on the spot for Nathan as he was going through all of this. And I think that's fantastic that you were able to do that for him. And it probably carries through for all of these children that he's come in contact with, of if they have other children in their classrooms in later years, that they've already been exposed, and they can come and be friends with those children with special needs and not be afraid to talk to them, to help them, to interact with them, which maybe they were feeling because they didn't know Nathan.
Yeah. And what is important, as you say that as well, initially when that happened as a mother, the mother's spirit in me was upset. You know, I was upset with the parents, not the children, because I was thinking, you know, parents, you should have taught your children. But the truth is, until you have been exposed to, you don't even know that that's a conversation that you need to have. And so it took other people, when I was talking about the situation, to say to me, this is a wonderful opportunity to teach children about differences and diversity. And I'm very happy that I was open to it and that it became such a powerful learning opportunity. And that is why for World Peace Day, or another of the reasons why for World Peace Day, we've chosen to go through books, because oftentimes we assume that children understand, and we assume that when we talk to children about these topics using the adult language that children understand, and we assume that they should know better, and they don't, because nobody has really broken it down in a way that they can understand and help to relate it to their own lives. And so that is why we are encouraging on World Peace Day, which is September 21st, for teachers, parents, wherever the children are, choose to read a book on diversity and inclusion, a book that is written for children, so that we are relating to children in a way that they can understand, and not just read the book for the children, but we want for whoever is doing the reading to do something to make the book more engaging, to draw the children in. And that's one of the things you've taught me, Erin. And I absolutely love doing reading activities with you, because whether it is the old lady in the shoe or the hungry caterpillar, it engages my mind in a way that move beyond just hearing the story, but allow me to analyze and to think. And I know that that's what it does for little children as well. And that is why I'm so excited about us not just putting a book out there and saying reading a book, but we're giving tools to say, how can you now make this book be an important tool that can really help children to grasp this concept of peace, and also grasp when something is not peaceful, to be able to make better judgment about the things they do and how they do them.
Yeah, that's great. You're right. I love this book, and there are a lot of ways to incorporate movement, dialogue, fun ways for children to understand a little bit more. You know, we find, especially children that are very, very young, information that comes to them, it's got to be more concrete. It's really hard to understand abstract feelings, notions, anything like that. Like peace is pretty abstract. What does peace mean? Those emotions and those thoughts may not be something that a lot of children even have the words to be able to express, but maybe they can show it in different actions. And I think this book really helps with that. How can you show peace? How do you show the empathy? How do you show the compassion, the kindness? And then through that, you can start to understand what peace is. And I like this book because actually your designers have made it interactive too.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Yes, and I have to jump in that they're Future by Design, and I think they've done a phenomenal job to capture the essence of Jamaica, the essence of Nathan, and in a way just make the book really fun to look at and fun to hold. So I just really wanted to say thanks to them.
So take the birthday page, for example. I mean, Future by Design put in balloons that they can color and a place where you can write. So the children can take it to be their own. If a child has their own copy of it, it would be fantastic where they can personalize it. This is my relationship with Nathan. This is me telling him about me, as well as him telling himself about him. So I really, really love that. What I've done is I've just created a cake, and it's on a construction paper, and it's similar to Future by Design's image of a cake. I tried to make it as close as possible. It's challenging. I'm not an illustrator. But what I've also done is I've made candles to signify, you know, the children, if you're doing this in reading circle, and they're all around that same age, 5 or 6 or 7, you make enough candles for the oldest person there, and they can tell you, okay, well, my birthday is this date, and I am however years old. And you can put the number of candles up to signify that. And it kind of just draws them into the story of like, okay, what's next? What else are we going to be doing with it? So that's one of simple. I just use construction paper for everything. I laminate it just because it keeps better. But having these questions in here was very intentional too. So asking questions back to your children to have them interact with you. Do you know where you were born? Again, like you had said, sometimes we assume that our children know some of these things, and some of them don't. Some of them don't even know their own birthdays, or what a month, day, or a year is, and they're learning that. It's such an abstract concept to say, you know, it's September. So where were you born? They might say, you know, I was born in a hospital. Well, do you remember where, or like what city, or even the hospital's name or anything like that? They may not. So it's good to kind of draw that information out of them, or to teach them that. And so I really like the questions in there. And because Nathan was born in Jamaica, completely different country, it's fantastic that we learn a little bit of geography of like, okay, where's Jamaica? And we can even expand that as they have questions of, is Jamaica an island? What kind of climate do they live in? Is it hot? Is it cold? And even this picture kind of shows that they are on an island. They're surrounded by water. How would you feel if you were surrounded by water, depending on where you live? I like that it can draw out side conversations or side points for a teacher or a caregiver or parent to be able to talk about too. And I use books on a monthly basis, so I could be using this book all month to teach about inclusion, draw in some other books too, but as a base to use it and then expand, and I think it's lovely for that. We go back into, I live with my family, my mom, my dad. Can they name who their brothers and sisters are? Are their brothers and sisters older or younger? So talking about that and actually just having that dialogue with them is very, very key. It expands their own language, it expands their own vocabulary. You can even talk to them about your, when you were growing up, so-and-so was my brother and sister, and I lived with my cousins. That might be foreign to some, what that would mean. So it's good to expand of what does family mean? And who's a part of your family? And some families are small and some families are bigger, but that's okay. A family doesn't also necessarily have to be your biological family. Sometimes your family could be those that you've grown up with and are very, very close with, but you're not biologically related to them, but you rely on each other, you count on each other, and you have that relationship. That could also be family. So just so many different routes that you can go with that. And I love it because your questions are open-ended, but you can add structure around it too. So if it's too open-ended, you might have to give choices. You might have to say, do you have, how many brothers do you have? One or two? Are they older or younger? Giving them those choices helps shape. Talking about, I have 2 eyes, 2 hands, and 2 feet like you. This is great because you can get child up and moving. Can you wiggle your toes? What does that mean? So you're adding in directions. Can they follow some of those or can they not? What do we need to further dive deeper into of some of those challenges or areas of strengths that they have? I love the picture of the one eye because as a child, I could not wink. I couldn't blink. So both eyes together at the same time, but winking is so challenging. So, even drawing some of that in of, what's the difference between a wink and a blink? Blink, we use 2 eyes, wink, we use 1. So, but because of that, I just created a set of eyes using construction paper that I have. But because of that, my eyes can blink. They can't blink. So, I guess we can turn it, so it'll be, this would be a wink, I guess, where it would be just 1 eye. But to have props like that, again, out of construction paper, it's fun because then not only are they doing it with themselves, but a lot of the times kids like to manipulate something. So if you have something in front of them where they can take, like these, super simple, and they can actually just move it up and down, that's more fun than to blank yourself,
And they could actually make those as an activity leading up to the reading of the book.
Yeah, so we're all making eyes, and they could be all sorts of colors of eyes. It could be purple eyes, green eyes, all sorts. I just only happen to have pretty much yellow and green of construction paper at the moment, so it's a little bit more challenging. When you talk about your favorite foods, every kid has their favorite foods. And you can also have them create those too. So for Nathan, his favorite foods, cake and ice cream. Well, I've made cake. I put a hole in it, but I made cake. And I've made some ice cream. Again, this is just made out of construction paper, but kids like to be able to touch, to hold, because I probably wouldn't be giving them actual cake. They can hold on to something like this, or you can pretend to eat. Like what is your favorite food? My favorite food is cake, and we can eat it together, and my other different cake. But that's kind of what I do with different food items. What don't you like to eat? What does it mean to not like something? What's yuck? And for Nathan, it's vegetables. Does he have a specific vegetable he really hates to eat?
Yeah, he would not touch spinach. He will not touch broccoli, because children, he's very sensitive to texture. And that happens with a lot of children generally, but a lot of children with disabilities and special needs tend to have those biases to texture. So, and it's funny because he loves tomato. He will not eat cucumber because it's a little harder to manage. He will not eat beans and peas. He may try a small piece of lettuce, but that's as much as you'll get. The vegetable that he eats most is actually callaloo, which is like spinach. It's a Jamaican type of spinach that is cooked up. So he'll have callaloo cooked, and he will have tomatoes, but he doesn't pull around any of the others.
Yeah, as a kid myself, I did not like the texture of spinach either, because it was slimy, and it was hard to swallow for me.
Wow.
And I could understand not wanting to eat broccoli or cucumbers too, because those are hard. So sometimes maybe softening things like that make it a little bit easier too, but I was sensing a green theme with Nathan of no broccoli, no peas, no cucumbers, no spinach.
They're color thing too.
I don't know. But that would be something that I would do, of like, let's make your favorite foods, or let's color your favorite foods. I would probably have this already outlined for them. So color it, we can cut it out. So then they're working on a little bit of fine motor at the same time, but we're talking about your favorite foods. Why do you like cake? Because it's sweet, because it's chocolate, because I get a cherry on top of it. Any of those things, it just expands their understanding of how to describe something. I really like that. And we're using things that they're already motivated by.
Right.
I could probably expand that way too. And then you talk about what you do together as a family, and what Nathan's favorite things to do is, and it's to be with family, and it's to watch TV together. He does like to watch movies and TV. It's fun. And that's a motivator for him, and we use that to help with communication.
Yes, and sometimes the movies that he watch are actually movies that we make, because I do a lot of videos for work and produce a lot of content, and where he is in it, and he loves that. So, and he wants everyone to come and sit with him when he's watching that, and he pretty much applauds every time he sees one of us cross the screen. He just loves that.
That shows love for you. It shows love for his family. He loves seeing his family. Whether it's in person or in a movie, he's still going to be just as excited. And that's great. So talking about then, what do you like to do with your family? And we had already talked about, family does not necessarily have to mean your biological family either. It could be of anybody that is who you consider as family, those that you rely on, those that you can count on. And so what do you do with the people that you love? And it could be watching TV like Nathan does. It could be painting. Could these children then maybe draw a picture of their favorite activity that they do? And so it brings to life just connection. So then they're learning not just about Nathan, but they're learning about each other in that class or in that group. So, you like to watch movies with your family. Me too.
Yeah.
You like to watch. So it starts, you're helping generate conversation among those students and possibly helping them form some relationships, some friendships that way, just because they're learning about each other a little bit more. Instead of just knowing them in that classroom or in that setting, they know them now. And I think that's great, because I've run into my own students outside of the classroom, and they're always surprised. You're at the grocery store? Yes, I am. I have to get food just like you. You live somewhere else. Again, it's going back to that idea that you've talked about of, we assume that our children know some of these things, and then we get surprised when they don't know some of these things. It's like, yes, I have to go get groceries. Yes, I live in your neighborhood, actually, and I don't live at school. So the big one. And then you go in and talk briefly about his friends at school. And I love that you named one of his best friends, because that's important. It's a connection to make, just versus just stating a blanket statement of, I have a best friend. Although we should also recognize that not every child has a best friend either. Yeah. But they could have friends, who are their friends. My best friend growing up, an animal, because I connected, with a dog a lot more, and it was fine. But, my best friend is Miko. It's great. We hung out together all the time, but so, and, talking about school, of learning new things. Do these students go to school? If you're reading in a classroom, then yes, they are. But what is your favorite part of the day? Maybe they weren't really excited to be in school before, but now, because you're helping them build some relationships and some friendships this way, maybe they're becoming a little bit more excited. Maybe they do like circle time. Maybe nap time used to be the most fun because you got to eat your favorite food. But now maybe circle time is becoming just as much of a favorite, because you're getting to know others around you. So I really like that you can draw them in that way. What is your favorite? And I would tell them what my favorite is. My favorite is circle time, because I get to learn about all of you. And I get to learn about what your thoughts are and what your feelings are, and not just what you want and what you need, but a little bit more deeper than that, who you are. And it gives the opportunity to build that relationship all year. And then you talk about how Nathan was born. And I think that's also important, because cerebral palsy is not, it's hard to understand for a little child, because, as you know, cerebral palsy, the range of ability, it's such a range. Yeah. One child with cerebral palsy could look very, very different from another child with cerebral palsy. Yeah. And even just introducing that word to them is quite important. And then we can introduce them to World CP Day. Right. But this kind of brings then empathy to Nathan, to understand that, okay, he had a hard time growing up. He had a hard time because of all the medical challenges he was fighting against, where he couldn't learn the things that maybe children that were not growing up with special needs didn't have to overcome. So he's doing a couple of different battles, versus other children may not be going through the same thing. They might be going through their own challenges, with growing up in general, but it brings in that humanity. How then can you relate to them? And I really, really like that. So I like talking about walking, feeding, and sitting and all of that, because then you can introduce him to the different equipment that he needs. Yeah. I haven't finished yet because I don't have any, my math skills are terrible, but I'm starting to draw a wheelchair. And being there, if there's another child with a wheelchair in that classroom, can introduce that equipment. You can introduce a chair that helps Nathan sit better to keep him more focused, that keeps him up so that he doesn't slide down. And some of these children might find it fun too, of, hey, can I help set up, the chair to help Nathan sit, or to, when we're doing circle time, and maybe Nathan is now on his stomach to on a wedge. Can we also do that too?
Mm-hmm.
Might enjoy something like that, especially if they have other children in that classroom with different kinds of equipment. Just introduce them to it, and it becomes a little less scary.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it is when they don't know, they're scared. But when they start to understand, then they become more comfortable and they become less scared.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So yes, I would introduce different equipment, and Nathan talks about my wheelchair is great because it's got two big wheels that go over really big rocks. You can compare it to a bicycle. A lot of these kids like to ride bicycles. Does your bicycle go over big rocks? Well, I could do that too,
Mm-hmm.
Except my wheels aren't, in front and back of each other. They're next to each other and I'm in the middle. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, again, add a construction paper and I would make this wheel spin so they can kind of see it, they can touch it, manipulate it like that. So, yeah, that's kind of how I would draw a little bit more of engagement out of the children that I'm reading this book with.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talk about communication device, and this is kind of where you and I had a bigger conversation about the story. Is key component to Nathan is he's nonverbal, and a child who doesn't talk still communicates, but in a different way. How does he do that? It could be through sign, so we can also introduce different signs to the other children in the class. It could be through a communication device, which is what Nathan uses. And again, made out of construction paper. Sorry, it's a glare because of my laminate. But just drawing boxes. He uses a NovaChat, and this is kind of really what it looks like, where he's got different pictures on each row, and he's able to tell you full sentences of like, I want bananas. So he can do that in different ways. And allowing other students to see his device, get to know it too, use it to communicate with him back, because it'll encourage him to use it more versus maybe be embarrassed to use it in front of other children that don't use it. But I do this. So if I were to ask a question, I might say it on the device, like, when is your birthday? I'll put it on there, and I might answer my own question of March 23rd. You? And then he's got to go find it himself. So I think if there's a device in the room, it's good to introduce to anybody who's in that room. I feel like this is something that gets put on the back burner a lot. It can be more of a hassle to use because it takes a little bit longer. And if you've got a class full of 15, 20, 30 kids, how do you manage that? But if everybody has the opportunity to see this, maybe it can teach them patience. Well, we need to wait because I'm asking a question through this, and somebody else is answering it because they need to through this, versus somebody else can answer it, verbally, or they might answer it through sign. But this is an important piece, I feel like, introduce a communication device, because that also, again, like any other, like the wheelchair, the chair, the equipment that he uses, it's very different. This is also very different, and not a lot of people see this. Not a lot of adults see this either. And devices have gotten better too, because you can use it on a phone, you can use it on a tablet. They don't look any different. Us playing on, an iPad or something like that. So they have gotten a lot better. But I really like using this. And then, you can change out the inside. Again, they're just drawn pictures, but you can. They're fun. Yeah, so that's I think that's kind of where I would end with a lot of the manipulatives I would do for this. I think the rest is having dialogue.
Yes. And I just wanted to point out, thank you so much for that, Erin. When Future by Design started with the illustrations, they came back to me and asked me if Nathan had a favorite toy and what was a constant companion to him. And so this is his doggy Shades. And Shades look exactly like this with his shades, which is why he had the name Shades, that Nathan fell in love with. And for several years, it was him and Shade everywhere. And by the way, it's a stuffed toy. So it was him and Shades everywhere. If he's sitting down and watching TV, Shades is sitting beside him. When he goes to bed, Shades is laid down beside him. So Shades is reflected here. And of course, the important things that are with him, which is his wheelchair and his communication device. So I loved how they captured Shades just right throughout the book, you know, just really being a companion to Ethan. And you did say that not every child may have a best friend, but perhaps not every child may have a best friend who's human. It could be an animal like you did, a dog, a cat, you know, some other pet, or it could be a stuffed toy, you know, a famous stuffed toy. Nathan's friends these days is Max from the movie. What's the name of that movie again with the dogs? Pets, from Pets.
Oh, from Pets, yes.
So his favorite toy is Max. I think Max is over there, and Olaf from Frozen. So those are what he hangs out with now. And of course, whenever he sees Shades, he goes right back to default mode and he hugs Shades like, "Hi friend, I haven't seen you for a while." So it is really good because it showed his personality, it showed his preferences, it showed his likes and his dislikes. And I found that the children really responded to knowing those things about him. And you know what? They were also very surprised. You know, I remember one little girl came up to me and she said, "So he's just a kid like me?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yes, and it's great to know that, you know, just allowing you to show those similarities between Nathan and anybody else just opens up that door for everybody of, you know what? I'm not seeing his disability. I'm seeing him as Nathan.
Yeah.
And that's key.
Yeah. And when we talk about peace, that's a beautiful note to end on, because that's really what it is. Because when we can learn to get along, and we can learn to live together, and we can learn to respect the differences of others, that helps to generate peace in communities, peace in homes and communities, peace in countries, and peace around the world. And so the best place to start a conversation of peace is with children, because they have such a tremendous capacity to learn and a tremendous capacity to love. Because when you talked about, you know, how you can teach them how to support him, and they became so helpful. You know, I carry his books to Nathan, but I would ask him, "Nathan, do you want me to carry your books today?" And, you know, and they became very protective. I remember hearing one little girl saying to somebody else, "You can't sit on his wheelchair, you may break it." You know, and he needs his chair, and she was the defender of his chair. You know, because you took him out of the chair for him to do other activities. She was like, "Nobody's to sit in Nathan's chair." So, you know, when you go to pick him up from school, there was somebody with his school bag, somebody with his lunch kit. You know, somebody was trying to push him, even though the chair was taller than them. But it was just beautiful to see just so much love being poured out of them, and for them to see him as one of them, and for them to see him as somebody who needs their help, you know, and for them to look out for him and play with him to make sure. There was a day that I was called because I dropped him at school and he was crying. And the school called me after a couple of hours to say, "You know, I think something is up with him. We can't figure it out, so you need to come." And when I went to school, They had a sofa in their classroom, and there were three little girls with them, 6 years old,
Mhm.
and they all sat around him and they were reading to him. And by the time I got there, he was so happy and he was kind of waving me off. No, I don't want to leave anymore. Because they just had
No
it.
longer needed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so those are some of the things that really helped me to understand how important it is to have these important conversations with young children and to help them to understand, but also help them to be able to relate. What can I do and how can I do it? So, in teaching them, it really goes a far way because that lesson, as you say, will live on beyond the kindergarten classroom.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is all great. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for just everything that you have put. I remember when you first saw the manuscript and you were so excited and, started saying, oh, this is, you started actually working on some of those by from then, this is such a great book, that has opened up on so many dimensions. And I'm really happy that we have created this video. And while we created it for Peace Day, it is a video that will live beyond. And so I will be sharing it with the people who bought the book because I think it's an important support for them to understand, that you can do a lot more than just reading it and putting it on a shelf.
And depending on what is going on in the certain time or who you're using the book with, there are a lot of other things that you can do with the book to draw out language from other students as well. So, I'm also happy to talk with anybody else who might be looking for more of an individualized kind of like suggestions onto what else could I do with this, because I'm working with these group of kids who are X, Y, and Z or whatever. I can definitely help brainstorm some of that.
Oh, thank you. And we will hold you to that. But I know you're good for your promise. So thank you so much. All right. So on September 21st, are you going to be reading the book out loud to anyone? Is that part of something that you think you would do as part of the reading out loud challenge? I mean, you've read it out loud and you're all over the place. But, so I think that would be good enough. But that is a challenge. And so we just encourage other people who you may know and, and to just watch the video to find ways in which we can really engage. Because if ever a time in the world we need to not just talk peace, but we need to act out peace, it is today. And, so we are very happy to be able to make this contribution to World Peace Day 2020. So until then, this is me, Christine Elizabeth Stapley Banks, and Erin Mercer. Thank you so much for watching, and we invite you to keep visiting our channel, Raising Special Needs, on YouTube as well as on Facebook and Instagram for this particular video, as well as other videos that we have created and will be creating as we continue to inspire, to touch, to move, and to provide resources that will support you in this journey of working or parenting or raising a child with special needs. Thank you. Bye-bye. See ya.
See ya. I think you're still recording.
I don't know, that's